Labour Social here, fringe event of the Labour Party Conference. Welcome to the Camp and Furnace in the Baltic Triangle. Welcome, welcome. Really great to see so many people here. This is amazing. And we have as our guests today, we have Supertanskiii, we have Marina Purkiss, we have Phil Moorhouse, and we have Femi Oluwole. Thank you very much. We're live streaming this event, so we might get comments coming in, most of which are going to be like, the sound is crap, but we tried to sort that. We haven't been able to, but never mind. We're recording it as well, so later on we might have a better audio version. So thank you very much for coming along. Mike G, hello, how you doing, mate? There's loads of cool people in this audience, isn't there? This is like a who's who of political agitators on social media. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a little bit of a chat. It's just going to be a discussion. It's not going to be like me now, a big speech or anything, about how we all got started on social media and how it's going for us and where we went wrong and where we went right in some ways. So I've been making videos on YouTube for years now. Before I got all political, I used to travel around the world and I made a load of videos through that. Femi is pretty much, are you Instagram or are you Twitter? Mainly Twitter. So he's our Twitter guy. Phil is our YouTube guy. Marina is our podcast, Spotify?
Podcast and also Twitter, sorry.
Podcast and Twitter, because obviously the trawl, your podcast, is about trawling through Twitter, so we don't have to. And Tanskiii kind of took over TikTok for a while.
Started on TikTok, but now more, Twitter's, it's kind of catching up on Twitter now.
Yeah. So the point is there's all different social media journeys that we can take, but the point is that we kind of feel like not just the Labour Party, but other political parties on our side of things, get the Tories outside, might not be using social media as well as they possibly could. So let's talk to Femi first of all. So Femi, you were a lawyer, running around Europe, having a great time, and then you came home here and started doing, tweets. Tell us all about that.
Well, technically I didn't qualify as a lawyer. I got my law degree, then realized I didn't want to be a lawyer because I didn't like what lawyers do. And I let's be fair, I didn't think I could make enough change as a lawyer.
There's no one from the Good Law Project today, is there?
I wanted to make sure I was always on the right side of history, so I wanted to be able to choose my causes, which felt like politics is the way to go. And so I went into human rights, and then I was working in Brussels and Vienna with the EU, trying to push for a better human rights policy, because the UK was and still is selling up to Saudi Arabia, which we used to bomb hospitals and schools in Yemen. We trained the Bahraini police officers who then go to Bahrain and torture human rights defenders. So, and I was working with British members of the European Parliament, including people like Richard Corbett over there.
Richard's here. Hey Richard, how you doing? He was one of our 3 men in the pub a long time ago.
Basically trying to push for better policy on human rights. And so for me, in 2015, 2016, early 2016, I was already involved in what I thought was a battle for the soul of the UK, involving the EU and the Tories at the time. And so then Brexit came onto the thing, and it terrified me, because I thought, things are already bad. We're already helping bomb hospitals and schools. What could the Tories do if Brexit opened the field for that? And things have gone so well since. Clearly I was wrong, nothing to worry about. And so that's why I started campaigning about Brexit, making points about human rights. I wasn't even focused on the economics until it became increasingly clear how crazy the plans of people like Boris Johnson were. And then I started calling out Nigel Farage and his radio show, even though I only had 20 followers at the time on Twitter. And then got him to admit a bunch of lies that he told. And it just gradually started to snowball on Twitter. I put the videos up, that sort of thing. And then by 2018, in 2017, I came back to the UK to try and do this full time, and the rest was history.
Wow, so getting told that no one can hear us. Maybe that's made it a little bit better, I hope. I don't know. They'll probably do a better audio version later. So how did you, when you were starting out as anti-Brexit campaigner, was there any kind of strategy that you had with social media, or was it just a happy accident?
It was very much a happy accident, because I stayed off Twitter for most of my life. I was mainly Facebook, because I figured, all right, Facebook has already taken over my life. If I ever join Twitter, then I'll have no life at all, and that's exactly what happened. I started making tweets. I mean, the first thing I did was, in June, I bought a t-shirt from Primark, wrote EU questions, just asked us in the middle of the bull ring, centre of Birmingham, basically waiting to come talk to me. and within 20 minutes, a bird shat on my head, which was a sign of how well that campaign was going to go. And I just...
And it took it from there. Brilliant. So, I mean, how are you doing now on Twitter? I mean, obviously Twitter's turned to shit in many respects at the moment. Are you sticking with it? Are you hoping to ride it out?
So, the way I see it is still the biggest public platform, regardless of what Musk does. He's obviously made it much, much worse, but it's still a place where you can actually directly interact with politicians, because those politicians, you're not going to find Jeremy Hunt in any meaningful way on TikTok or Sunak, whereas you can actually call them out directly on Twitter, because that's where they are.
Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but do you think that's why more sported? Because it was the one platform where you could actually sort of speak truth to power in that respect. Probably do that on TikTok, probably do that on YouTube, Facebook.
Well, I mean, for me, the worst thing he did was the verification of money thing, because that means that essentially it puts a price on genuineness. It makes it personal consistency. So if you have more money, you're more able to get more profile, get more reach. And that's a fight that he knows the left can't really win, because there's simply more money on the right.
Fair enough, fair enough. So, Phil, how did you get started? You were busy working in school, weren't you? The school teacher, like singing.
When Brexit, I was on YouTube with a gaming channel. So the only Brexit I saw was boring giving the staff and the teacher. And then what it was massive. So by that point, I liked doing YouTube. So 2018, but obviously the blog actually, and then didn't really know what I was doing. And towards the end of 2018, politics growth. It was quite obvious it was going to go quite badly over 2019 for some time. Now, by this time, I already knew how it worked. I'd been talking about advising future companies. So I knew how to go further. So from the 1st of January 2019, I'm going to do content pretty much every day.
Mostly a focus on the idea of the channel was a focus on Westminster politics, Brexit, anything that was important politically, because I sort of felt where I am politically on the left, and quite far to the left in terms of my personal views, is that people, and obviously this is quite topical this weekend, people have a particular view of people on the left. There's a bit of a stereotype, and I thought, well, I'm not really one of them type of thing. So I wanted to present a counterbalance while still having the same sort of economic and sometimes social views, but to have a different perspective, hence the title, A Different Bias. But I knew that over 2019, the opportunity was there to build up a big showing, because politics was going to be quite crazy. There's a constitutional expert, legal expert called David Alan Green, who keeps saying that constitutional law shouldn't be exciting. It has been for the last few years, and I sort of rode that wave because I knew that was going to happen, and I knew that politics was going to be in a very bad place for a few years. And I said right from the start, as I was building the channel up, it's, when it normalises, my audience may disappear, because all of a sudden it won't be all that exciting. There's nothing particularly exciting about me. I'm not like Billy Connolly. So it may wane, but, it was also clear that this was going to be something that could be, quite big. And so, I spent 2019 building the channel up, and then I went full-time, although I did still do a bit of part-time teaching in 2020. That was interesting during COVID. And then just built from there, and now very much full-time.
Cool. So moving on to Marina, you were trawling, quite literally, through Twitter. Oh no, what happened? Microphone disaster. You weren't trawling through Twitter.
I joined Twitter because I had to complain about my food shop not arriving. So I think I was pissed off. I'd done half the dinner, I was waiting on the ingredients for the remainder of the dinner, and I couldn't finish it. Anyway, so I joined Twitter. About the same time, the referendum happened, and I was pretty apolitical before then. But I remember waking up on that morning that we voted to leave, and even though I couldn't have told you a single benefit of being a part of the EU.
Do you remember where you were that
I remember exactly where I was.
It was like JFK being shot, isn't it? Everyone remembers where they were when they found out we voted out the EU.
All I could have told you was a freedom of movement. That was the only benefit I thought there was to being a member of the EU. But something my heart sank. Anyway, from then on, I switched from listening to Chris Moles and LBC to LBC, sorry, and then from there began my radicalisation. Fell down rabbit holes, and then I think the more I found out about just how our politics is the Wild West. There is no, in advertising, so my full-time job, by the way, which I go back to on Thursday after maternity leave, I'm a bit wobbly about that, but my full-time job is in marketing. And I just can't believe that, in marketing, you've got these really strict standards, you've got the Advertising Standards Authority. If you are misleading, Danone would find, I think, hundreds of thousands of dollars for talking about the wrong types of bacteria in their yogurts. And yet you can have prime ministers, secretaries of state. I mean, Jesus Christ, Tory conference was just a bin. It's one of the 7 bins of lies and conspiracy theories, and there is absolutely nothing to stop them. So anyway, I fell down rabbit holes just understanding how all of these lies, the Brexit lies, were possible. Started tweeting about them, and it just picked up traction, and people like Alistair Campbell became followers, and Dave Ludden Green, and Gary Lineker, Carol Vorderman, Deborah Mead, and then just retweets and retweets. And I think the only gap that people like us on this stage are filling is that the media do such a shit job in holding power to account and in just speaking stuff in a plain language. Sometimes I will say you also don't want to read a massive Guardian article. Sometimes there's so much noise, it's just about distilling it, and just people have very short attention span, they've got busy lives, they've got kids, they've got jobs. It's just trying to land something quickly that's important just to make someone think. And anyway, that was my approach with the tweets. It's somehow got out of control. And I'm at approaching 500,000 followers on Twitter. And then moved that onto a podcast now. So we've got myself and Gemma Forte, who is bloody wonderful, very funny. We do the Trawl podcast, and it's essentially we trawl through all of this shit. But we try and do it because some of it's hard to satirise. We've talked about this. It's so grim.
It's beyond satire.
It's beyond satire, especially that Tory conference. But we did do a Tory conference special podcast. But we try to bring some levity to it in a way that, again, just lands the message. And my friends started listening. A lot of my friends don't give a shit about politics. They listen because of me. And they've said, well, do you know what? You make it really interesting. You make it really relevant to me. And I think that needs to be more of what we do on the left. I don't think we're so good at doing that on the left. So that's what I do now. So Twitter still, Trawl podcast, back to work on Thursday, Jesus Christ.
So we've all had sort of individual experiences of social media and how it's worked for us. Now, for a very long time, I kind of assumed that YouTube in particular worked like this. You'd make one amazing video that will go like crazy viral, like, Gangnam Style or something. And then someone will come along and say, I really like to come to your gym, make me videos. So some sugar daddy will come along and say, here you go, here's some money, make some videos and advertise my shoe company or whatever it is. And my experience in making videos for YouTube, I kind of realised now that I did it completely the wrong way. So for those of you who don't know, I did travel videos and I worked with Lonely Planet, and then I came home just as the Brexit referendum happened and got really into the anti-Brexit campaigning and set up, walks and talks, what are they called? Rallies, marches, things like that. And doing a lot of stuff, including the Three Blokes in the Pub podcast or, video podcast. Which is a great idea, but I'm terrible as a business person. Do you know what I mean? Because the amount of money that you get for making these videos off YouTube for the advertising, it won't cover your fuel to the pub, never mind getting yourself a drink.
So what you're best doing, and what I've learned from Phil in particular, is making as much content as possible. And this is something that we feel like Labour could do a little bit better on, because if you go onto the Labour YouTube page, it is literally, they had videos from about 15 years ago.
Shit, that's the word. It's shit.
Sorry to anyone who's in Labour comms here.
Sorry.
But yeah, the fact that they still had videos from many, many years ago of leaders who are no longer leaders, maybe leaders who aren't even, Labour MPs anymore, on their YouTube channel was pretty bad. And the fact that they weren't doing daily content. And that's what Phil and I have been trying to do with Labour Social. So the idea with Labour Social is not just get the Tories out, because obviously we want to do that, but also Phil does a show on Sundays called Labour Vision, and he does a fantastic job of explaining Labour policy, I think, better than they do. Because there was a video recently, Phil, wasn't there, with the, was it West Streeting, talking about the NHS?
Yeah, so it was actually quite ironic because I had a little check. So I did a video on an aspect of NHS policy. Oh, this is quite a lot, but an aspect of NHS policy a few weeks ago. West Streeting had happened to do one at the same time on the Labour Party channel, and this isn't me on my channel where I'd get 20, 30, 40, 50,000 views. It was on the Labour Social, which is still very much in its growing stage. And I got more views than the person who's going to talking about Labour's policies than the person who's making them.
Wow.
And this is the problem, And if I did it on my own channel, I did this actually around the local elections. Keir Starmer put a video on the Labour Party channel. It did better than their usual stuff. And I said, right, it's actually a really bad topic, but I'll do it. I'll get no view. And I got 20 times as many views as Keir Starmer got.
Yeah.
And that was a bad result for my channel.
That's pretty damning. Can I do my Moneyball analogy? I love my Moneyball analogy. So there's a movie called Moneyball. If you haven't seen it, it's got Brad Pitt in it, and he plays this character who is the manager of a Major League American baseball team. And they never win the World Series, is it? And they've got no money, a bit like Everton. And essentially, they think, well, we haven't got enough money to buy any star players. So what we'll do is we'll get a load of just slightly above average players, and all together they'll, level each other out, and we'll win the World Series. And spoiler alert, they almost win the World Series as a result of doing that. And I realised this with the videos. Instead of trying, really hard, spending ages editing these things together, these works of art, and then, it might go viral, but it probably won't. Rather than doing that, you're better just having a lot of slightly above average videos and getting them out every day and getting that content out. And also, something that I think that Labour could learn from is engagement. And I think that's something that Phil does very well. Actually, everyone on the panel here does this really well. We're talking to people out there on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, if you're into video games. And building that community is so important, because people come back because they know that you might read their messages out. Like Colin Thompson here has just said, I am good if Phil makes the policy too. So there you go. Cheers, Colin. So we've got people having that two-way conversation, which is really, really important, because we need to be part of this. If we're going to get the Tories out, which we very much hope we're going to do in the next election, we need to make sure that what replaces the Tories actually doesn't just dictate stuff from above, actually listens to us, party members and members of the public, Labour voters, or even non-Labour voters, to find out, how we should shape the policy going forward. I don't want to talk about, I don't want to put words in everyone's mouth, but I'm very much for PR, I'm very much for rejoining the EU, and I'm very much for universal basic income. They're my three things that I would like to see in the future. None of those things I don't think are going to be in the Labour manifesto in this election. I think they're just like, someone said, now's the time to be bold, that you're 20 points ahead. And I thought, actually, no. Now's the time to just, win the election. And then we can start, having that conversation about what maybe they could do better, or maybe, other aspects of it. So when we're talking about sort of starting on YouTube, I'll just come over to Tam for a moment, because you were very prolific on TikTok, weren't you, to get started?
Like Marina said, it got out of hand badly. I was working as a photographer, and then I started working for an energy company literally 2 weeks before lockdown, so I had to learn a job alone at home. And And I had like a little rude boy in the office, like, yeah, I'm TikTok famous, bruv. He put out a video of him washing money and it got like 2 million views or something. I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And I'm not going to lie to you, I started off just rinsing the absolute piss out of Tory MPs and people really liked it. And then I started discovering through things like Byline, through like independent journalism, exactly what they were up to. I discovered like Exercise Cygnus, where they had been able to prepare for this and they had not. And then I went down a really dark rabbit hole, and the person that I was supposed to go into business with took their own life. And I had to kind of stand outside during, you know, the height of the COVID regulations when they were all partying. And that just spurred me on to try and find out more, because as you say, the mainstream media were not reporting any of it. None of it, until it got to the point where the Mail eventually did, of all people, and then Geordie got sacked, didn't he, for doing that. So yeah, it was just pure anger and wanting to try and use the platform that I'd managed to somehow build to just tell people what's happening. That's all I care about, is just telling them, because most of the press don't.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I really value like Byline, New European, all those others, because they're telling people the truth about what's happening.
And if it does feel like the truth is a rare commodity these days, especially in the mainstream press, where they're allowed to print whatever they want. We didn't get Levis at 2. And as a result of that, they get away with murder. I mean, they can print lies on the front cover and then we track them 3 weeks later on page 27 at the bottom.
What's interesting as well, have you noticed that Cara Vorderman is an absolute warrior, right? Yes. Calling out. And yet the right wing and the right wing press hate her, they're coming for her. But for what? Like, what has she said that's actually inaccurate? That they just don't like. But it's exactly that. They do not like the fact that she's doing the job that the press should be doing and isn't doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not because she's some like vindictive person or whatever. It's actually quite.
Plus, the people working for those papers probably want to get into government, because that's the revolving door, isn't it? It's like they fail at being a banker, they go into politics. They fail in politics, they go back to the tabloid. It's just,
or they go to GB News.
or they go to GB News.
And of course, the government took out, during COVID, when, you know, trying to sell a newspaper was quite tricky because you weren't allowed out of your house. The government paid a number of mainstream newspapers. They gave them a lot of money to run adverts that didn't really need to be run.
Yeah.
But it was a way of, you know, sort of, we're going to look after you, you look after us.
Yeah.
It's the extent to which, if we shouldn't exist, none of us on this platform.
I don't want to do this. I just want to travel the world and have a party.
I'm the verge of divorce. My husband's like, phone down.
If the mainstream media did their jobs properly, people like from a personal perspective, if they with the single market, like that is the thing that. The absolute absence of the single market and understanding of the single market from the conversation is the thing that always just still enrages me constantly, because most people still don't know what it is. And the BBC literally lied about it. Like, the single market means if the EU didn't exist and you had 28 different countries all making their own laws in their own way, and you wanted to sell a product to those 28 different countries, you'd have to make your product comply with 28 different sets of rules, which would send your costs through the roof. It would lower the quality of life because things would be so expensive. And therefore, by making rules together and having a system of mutual recognition, which means that as long as something is legal in your country, you can sell it in any other EU country. There's one set of rules to follow. Prices fall, quality of life improves. That's the single market in about 25 seconds. The BBC had 3 years, and yet in March 2018, their published glossary of EU terms, of Brexit terms, declared that the EU was just a free trade area. The single market was just a free trade area. So just no tariffs. And that supported the Tory line that all we need is a free trade deal. We don't need the single market. We can get all the benefits of being in the EU with just a free trade deal. That lie was incredibly damaging. And the entire Brexit debate was about take back control versus the other side saying it'll make us poorer, without anybody explaining how having different laws to the EU would make us poorer. And that failure is what creates people like myself, like Marina, like Tan, like Robert. How do you spell it?
Phil.
A
different. No, I'm not Max. I'm Phil.
Oh, sorry. Different by
He's an Irishman living in Italy.
He's also very.
That's why we exist, because they've been essentially lying by omission.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, me too. No, but I mean, that was my journey. Like, I studied history and politics at university, and I hated it. No, I enjoyed kind of finding out about it. But the actual reality of politics, there was a lot of backbiting, there was nastiness, do you know what I mean? And that's not what I really wanted to do with my life. And, you know, for many years, I kind of ignored it. If you asked me, honestly, 12 years ago, who was on the front bench of the Tory party, or the coalition government, I should say, I wouldn't know. You know, I might be able to name Nick Clegg. I'll probably get his name wrong and get him mixed up with the guy from, you know, Last of the Summer Wine or something. You know, I just wasn't, because for me, politics was something that just went on in the background. It's like how Sainsbury's get their, you know, their food in. It's just something that happens, and you know, if it works out, great, and I can go into Sainsbury's and buy something. I'm not really that into it. But what I started to see with the Tories coming in with austerity, first of all, it's just things getting worse. And I think there was sort of like a high point a couple of years after, you know, the Tories got in, probably as a legacy of the previous Labour government, things like, you know, the Olympics and things like that. But then it really started feeling, and what would happen to me is I would go away travelling and not come back for a year. And so it wasn't like, I wasn't the frog in the slowly heating water. I was coming back and going, oh my God, what's happening? You know, every time it was a bit of a shock to come back and see the standard of living of, you know, my fellow Brits just go down and down and down. And then when the Brexit vote happened, I thought that's it. I need to get involved in this. I need to do whatever I can, just, you know, so we can explain. Maybe one day to me grandkids would say, "What did you do during Brexit, Grandad?" I could go, "Well, I stood up and fought against it with a silly hat on." But yeah, I mean, it's pulled people like us into this political realm, which we might not have otherwise entered. But now, I mean, it's not enough for me just to get the Tories out. I want to be part of the rebuilding of this country, because what they've done to this place is just, it's disgraceful.
And also, Phil, you said that you might go a bit quiet when the Tories are out. I don't think so. Like, people have said that, like, oh, what are your tweets about? I think, I say sadly, I understand what Keir Starmer is having to do, but if from what we're seeing, we're going to have to be as loud, as noisy, make as much disruption, as much lobbying, if Labour get into power, than we currently do with the Tories.
Yep.
Because they aren't offering up proportional representation or rejoin or whatever.
This is the big difference. This is the big difference between Labour and Conservatives, and why it winds me up when people say, "Oh, they're all the same." Here's the big difference: Labour will have to listen to us. The Tories only listen to each other. They only listen to millionaires and oil barons and tobacco barons and people who make arms, arms manufacturers. They don't listen to you and me. Whereas,
and that's when the work begins, is when they get in. Because we're going to have demands for what we've been put through online, dealing with like trying to get the ball over the line and helping them out.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note as well that any one of you can do what we've done. Like any one of you, everyone should be making content. Everyone should be trying to, if they can. Because I'm not equipped to do it necessarily, you know. Everyone's got it in them.
Do you know, it's hard to do it with your friends.
With your friends.
So I'm happy to do it online, but do you not find that when you get in a room with your friends who aren't necessarily as politically engaged as you, it's very difficult to have these conversations with you about, oh, she's being all political again. It's very hard. Yeah. Yes, online is a safe space, but it's really important to try and find a way, and I guess that's what I'm trying to do. You do it really well. I think we've all done it in a way, is try and get the people who are like, not sure about politics, not for me, and I'm like, you sure it's not for you? How's your mortgage doing? And then try and just pull them in that way.
How your bills doing?
Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say, it might be more regional, because when you go to Yorkshire, no one really worries about whether anyone wants to listen to you or not. So, which is why I spent a lot of my time talking about politics in the staff room.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, people were free to leave, but that was it.
You go to the staff room.
You're a teacher.
So
you
I was
guys will talk and you will listen.
No, I didn't used to do it with the students, of course. Although I did always used to, particularly as I spent a lot of time working in colleges, at least insist to vote, and I would advise young people, and I would certainly advise young people again, to, even if you don't like anyone, like if none of them appeal to you, and I can understand why they don't appeal to you, because if you look at a lot of policies that are aimed at older people, it's because they vote. Imagine what you could get if you vote. And I said to them, you don't have to vote for someone, you can just turn up, spoil your ballot paper, don't write anything rude, because it's not the candidates that are reading it, but, you know, just do a big grumpy face. and then you count as voting, and then all of a sudden, when there's 80% of you voting, just like there are old people, you wait for politicians to decide they want to say something to you. So I used to do that, and I used to explain the process, and then go to the staff room and talk politics.
One of the other things I always think as well between Labour and the Conservatives, or the Conservatives and any other party, is accountability. You know, the media don't hold this government to account. Most of them worked for the government, and, you know, like Tam was saying, they come in and out. You know, they work for the Mail for a few years, then they work in the policy unit at Number 10, then they go back to the Mail afterwards. And so in the mainstream media, there's no one screaming like, how dare they do these things? Whereas with Labour, they're not going to get away with anything. When Labour get in, hopefully next year, touch wood, with a landslide victory, it's going to crush the Tories, put the Liberals into the opposition. Make them cry. Yeah, as soon as that happens, you're going to have the Mail, the Express, the Tory Graph, the Scum, all the newspapers, anything Labour do. I mean, you know, Keir Starmer can't get away with having a beer or buying his mum a donkey sanctuary. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
And this is why, because they are going to be relentless. Any misstep, even if it's not a misstep, is going to be splashed across the right-wing shit rags.
Yeah.
And also why I just hope that within their first term, they give us proportional representation, because otherwise we will find ourselves in this pickle again, because people will go, oh, it's not so good with the Labour government, oh, because they're going to have to be so tight with themselves, oh, they're hearing all this in the right-wing press, maybe I'll give the Tories another bash, Tories will get in, and then it's this all over again, and this country can't afford it.
It's so important to mention that Stop the Tories Not Vote, which is our campaign for tactical voting. We're not doing it because we want to do it. We're doing it because it's the only way under first past the post to get the ball over the line. We don't want that to be something we rely on. We want proportional representation. We want to change the voting system, because that could get them out for a long time. Make it very difficult for the Tories to get back in. So we're not doing it because we want to. We're doing it because it's literally our only hope, and the Conservative government are not getting any better. In fact, it's going full National Front, so it's an emergency to get them out. So
yeah, in fact, I met Annette when I was walking here today, and we talked about this because, if you don't mind me naming you, doesn't like Keir Starmer, but may hold her nose to vote for Labour because the most important short-term thing to do is to get the Tories out.
Oh, thank you for that. But I think we need to also move away from personality politics. I mean, populism have got us into this state. It got us Johnson. You're not voting for a leader. You're voting for the sum of the parts of Labour.
That's the point that I make up a lot of the time, because a lot of people are struggling with Keir Starmer. A lot of people say that they're all the same. No, the difference between the Tory party and the Labour Party, it's not about the leadership, it's about the members. Because the members of the Labour Party hold the values that many of us in this room share, whereas the members of the Tory party are literally the worst people in the country. That's the difference. We can actually
saying that about swearing.
We can actually work with Labour members. And as far as, I'm going to give a bit of hope here. I believe that we can get Keir Starmer to do the things that we need him to do. He's not going to want to do them because he's shown that. But as far as in his own private self-interest, he's going to be facing a country that has been through 14 years of Tory shithousery. And he's going to be facing a population that is crying for things to get better. And the levers that he can pull to make that happen, that one of the biggest ones is single market, customs union. He has to do that simply to save his own ass. As far as proportional representation goes, it's an easy sell if you actually have the motivation behind it, because this country has voted to the left of the Tories in almost every single election since the Second World War. We are a progressive voting country. That's who we are. And so if we do get proportional representation, I mean, it was a crazy moment a couple of months ago. Tory Lord Cruddas, who went on TV and literally said, if Labour get into power, they will introduce proportional representation and there'll never be a Conservative majority government ever again. It's Taylor Swift. Don't threaten me with a good time. So that, I believe, can happen.
Well, one thing, just before Phil comes in on this, Leveson too, we need to get the press under control and just hold them to account. This isn't about the government telling the press what to write, which is what happens at the moment. This is about having an independent watchdog, so not marking their own homework, and if they make a mistake, if they say something that isn't true, they just make something up, put it on the front page for 5 freaking days in a row.
Yep.
They actually have to retract it, pay a massive fine.
Yeah.
You know, at the moment, the rivers are full of shit. Why? Because it's cheaper to pay the fines than to clear up the shit. That's why. Same with the newspapers. It's cheaper for them to pay the little pissy fine that they're given and then put the retraction on page 27.
Yeah, I mean, that thing I said about how the BBC was essentially lying about what the single market was, they put that up in March 2018. They didn't change it until October 2018 when I had to go at Laura Koonsberg, and then they changed it 2 days later. It was up for months. And the damage that would have done in terms of preventing the damage we can see from Brexit, catastrophic.
Yeah.
That was also happening on TV, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They were having like someone that actually knew about the economics of it up against someone with an opinion, as if it was equivalent.
Yeah,
It's not equivalent.
They had the leader of the WTO
Against Andrea Leadsom.
Just for balance, let's find the village idiots and see what they think.
This false equivalence is what's landed us in this mess.
That's very
because
true.
you might, and Emily Maitlis talked about this, you might have to ring around. You know, you could quickly find someone on the Remain side that can argue why it's beneficial for the economy. You might have to ring around for hours to find one loony who's going to say the opposite, and then you put them both on an equal platform.
Yeah.
And you portray it as equivalence.
And Number 10 can also put influence on papers to remove articles that they don't like the contents of.
Yeah.
And look what they did to Emily Maitlis when she did that spiel with Newsnight.
With Newsnight, yeah.
They put pressure on her to have, you know, it's like, what?
Is that why she talked about that on the news agents?
It was referred to that she was like, you know, Number 10, got on the blower, got them to, yeah.
But we'll also say that the right is getting very heavy-handed in terms of lawsuits as well. And I say this as a person who has experienced it. Slaps. And so the party of free speech and the people who always advocate for free speech are quite ironically not so pro it, actually.
Richard Tyson. Sorry, what?
Brendan Clark's what? Damn it!
But I mean, that's something else as well. I feel like if I criticise a Labour MP, they're not going to try and sue me. But whereas the Conservative MP, you know, they've got the money, they've got the lawyers. They decide to do it. What is slaps? Is that like basically a threatening of a lawsuit to shut you up? Is that the idea?
Pretty much.
You can't afford to fight it, so they're going to bankrupt you if you don't.
You risk your
shut up.
house or you give in. And you
So in this case, do you have to prove that it wasn't slander or it wasn't liable? Is that
so?
You're guilty until proven innocent?
When it's happened to me, I go kamikaze. I basically publish a video saying I haven't got enough money to make this worth your while, and meanwhile you're looking like an idiot because you're supposed to be the champion of free speech, yet you're suing somebody into bankruptcy over a tweet.
Yeah.
And it's worked twice and they backed down just because it was more embarrassing to them.
To remember that when that happens to me. Phil, have you been done yet for slaps?
No, someone. Like the only time I've had anything close to it is over the COVID. I picked up on something the Good Law Project had picked up on one of the companies that had received funding on the VIP lane for PPE, which was totally unusable, and I did a video on it. But my entire video was entirely based on what the Good Law Project had produced and had been through court. So they said, "Oh, we don't agree with this. Can you take it down?" And I did temporarily, and I said, "No problem. But here are the following points you probably need to get back to me on." And they didn't respond back, so I put it back up.
Good for you.
Well done. I just shit myself and delete the tweets.
But I don't blame you. You've got things to lose, haven't you? And they will try and take you for everything. That's the problem.
This is the benefit of having nothing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, they even admitted it, didn't they? They were like, "Oh, well, we're not going to get anything out of money, so we're going to back down." Showing your arse there.
Isabel Oakeshott saying, "Yeah, we withdrew the lawsuit because we weren't going to make any money."
Oh my God.
Champions of free speech, ladies and gentlemen. So just getting back onto the social media aspect of it, obviously the social media landscape is changing very quickly at the moment. Does anyone here, can we just talk about Twitter for a moment? Because, you know, I didn't understand Twitter for a long time. I used to just put these tweets up for my friends, basically. But when Brexit happened, obviously it had more of an impact when you were challenging lies that people were putting on Twitter.
and it could be read, and sometimes you'll get a reply of someone famous, which is really exciting, which you've never got on Facebook or on YouTube or anything like that. But this last year, I've been very reticent to use Twitter at all because of the way it's gone. It seems to have just turned into, it was always problematic, should we say, but now it's turned into a proper cesspit. And they're not doing anything about it. People are sending them screenshots of horrible tweets that people have said that are threats, you know, really bad stuff. And they're saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this. And I can't see how much longer it can go on for.
But it's deliberately triggering. So the For You part of, I'm appearing now in people's For You feed.
Are you triggering people?
I'm
Marina?
triggering people because I'm appearing in that feed, and it's not people that follow me, but it's people that are going to be triggered by my content, and that's part of the algorithm, because that creates more reaction and outrage and engagement, and that's the success metric of that platform, as it is for YouTube, which is why YouTube has that same sort of algorithm where you are served up. I think it becomes more extreme, doesn't it? The content you're served up. So if you're served up something you'll know better than me.
Yeah, I mean, on YouTube, so with the analytics, it used to be quite different. A few years ago, it would, because it always points you to the things, ultimately it wants people on YouTube, it wants them to watch for a long time. And it doesn't do this anymore, but a few years ago it used to tell you how many likes and dislikes you got, and it would tell you how many views and all sorts of other things. And every time it was better than the equivalent period before, you'd get a little green arrow and how much % better, and every time it was a bit lower, a little red arrow downwards and how much lower. So when it came to likes and dislikes, oh, you got more likes, you 5% more likes, little green arrow, well done. And if you got more dislikes, little green arrow, well done, because it's all engagement. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether they like your content or not, as long as they want to watch it.
That's something I do on my videos. When someone gives me a negative comment, I was like, oh, thanks for watching and adding to the algorithm so more people will watch the video. Cheers, you're helping Labour get re-elected. Thumbs up.
I never used to block. I had a thing where I would never block people. And now I just have to, because it gets so viral and so personal. And yeah, it's not a nice place to be, and I think sometimes you need to take a break from it.
Well, as a woman, we've found the best way to get like more engagement is to make a mild mistake, because all the mansplainers will come in. They're like, well, actually, and then like your views go all the way up. So yeah, that's the best way to do it. But yeah, Twitter's an interesting one, isn't it?
Do you think it's going to survive?
Well, yeah, I think it would be foolish to move away from it, even though it's terrible, because then you will just have those guys with all the voices. You need to have some kind of counter narrative, I think, but I don't know. It's weird, if Twitter went away, I'd have to go somewhere else for abuse, you know, I'd have to like call up exes and talk to strange family members, because you're just so used to it now. But yeah, as you say, you have to take breaks, but it's useful because it's instant info. It still remains a place for kind of pretty much instant info.
And if you head over to Threads, like, I don't want to be in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I do need to hear those dissenting voices. I do need to see what crap these people are talking about, because that is what people believe. So you need to know, we need to understand what's out there to be able to try and combat it.
Yeah, when I started, I would watch Nigel Farage's show for an hour every single day. If you don't hear it, it wasn't good for my soul. But
are you okay?
I did
man alive.
a bit of Nick Ferrari on LBC before James O'Brien.
Oh,
and
God,
that's tough. The heavy breathing. In between the bits.
God help. But it's your fault that I'm on Twitter, by the way.
yeah, I apologise for that.
You did it. He posted one of my TikToks on, and it went mad. And yeah, you're responsible. So well done.
Sorry.
Thanks, man.
Well, Marina, what are you going to do? Because Marina hosts a podcast called The Troll with Gemma Forte, which is brilliant, and you should definitely subscribe to it. But it is a troll through Twitter. Have you had a discussion of what you're going to do if Twitter goes tits up?
No. There is no
Daily
contingency.
Express.
Oh gosh. There's no contingency plan.
Express comments.
I don't think we're there yet. We'll figure it out.
I think it's important to remember that regardless of Twitter's gradual decline, there is still like TikTok, which is where the new generations are. They are increasingly using that. They're less worried about Twitter going down because that's where they are.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about monetization, if we can. Has anyone found any way of monetizing any of these platforms apart from YouTube?
Facebook has started doing a bit of monetization.
How does that work?
On videos, on long form videos. I got told to start to put my videos on there, and it's actually it's almost catching up with YouTube. YouTube isn't a lot, but it's getting quite close. Anyone else use Facebook at all?
No.
Can't do that.
Absolutely hate Facebook.
Yeah.
Cannot tell you.
I don't understand how it works on Twitter yet. I've heard about it, but I don't know how it works. All I know is the only guilt-free way to make any form of monetisation is YouTube, because it's ad revenue. So it's not people making any form of personal contribution to you, it's literally just ad revenue. So, but I don't, TikTok Creator Fund is appalling. Like, terrible. Like, you could, I think, reach about 1 million people. One of my videos got 1 million views, and I think it gives you like a tenner or something.
Oh God.
But again, like, you just join these things, like, not necessarily. I don't think any of us do it for personal profit at all. Like, I certainly don't. But it helps a bit, doesn't it? Really, especially in the cost of living.
And the amount of time that you put into it.
A lot of time and research, because you have to be careful again not to get sued. You have to make sure that you're not saying anything that's wrong. You've got to do loads of research, because young people are using TikTok now. It's a bit worrying, more than Google for info. So I feel there's a responsibility to make sure that I've got all the facts in my videos. So I don't want to misinform people. That's what the other lot are doing, isn't it? So yeah, but I don't know much about
Podcasts can be a way forward to monetize.
Is that through advertising, or do you actually get money from Spotify? I've heard terrible things about Spotify.
No, all good so far. We've just gone over from Acast to Spotify, and we are doing okay now on ad revenue, but also ad reads as well. So we get sponsored, and we do a readout ad at the beginning of the Troll pod. By the way, go have a look. Have a listen. The Troll. It's basically like it's like group therapy for despair.
They're very, very, very funny.
They troll through Twitter, so you don't have to.
I'll tell you what you can do on YouTube as well. So you get a lot of businesses approaching you, so that you would do an advertisement for them, and then you know, in YouTube, when you're going through and uploading, you can just say, oh, I'm doing some sponsorship here, so don't do ad revenue for me. And one time I got a company wanting to ask if I wanted Nigel Farage to endorse my channel. That's my favourite one. They got back to me as well when I ignored them, and I had to explain the situation and how he probably wouldn't want to, and I don't want to pay for it.
There was a period where on YouTube, Nigel Farage adverts, you know how he does all those weird financial stuff that he does on YouTube, they would appear on my videos, and I'd be like, is Nigel Farage paying me now?
Not the cameos where he did that those weird. He read out those really bad things.
Yeah, he's a terrible.
Or Bella.
So at this point, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you've got any questions for any of us, just shout it out. Got a guy at the front here.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you happen to notice ever been an election where candidates for a political party have lost their deposits, and do you think the Tories will do worse this time?
They lost their deposit. The Tories lost their deposit in the by-election last week. Oh, general elections.
It will always happen, because the major parties will put up candidates, and there's some. I mean, if you don't get 5%, you don't get your deposit back. So there will always be some where they sort of feel they have to, and will lose those deposits. For the Conservatives, realistically, you're probably just talking like Scotland. They are probably going to get their deposit back in seats in England and Wales. The Liberal Democrats and the Greens tend to be the ones that shell out without much return. But there will be some seats where the Conservatives will lose that deposit. I just don't think it'll be in England and Wales.
Anyone else got any questions? Lady there.
Hi, I'm really grateful to all of you. So if you've got days, please remember that we're grateful to you. I'm interested to know what your lines are, how much you think about what your lines are before you post something or do something. I think I'm overcautious sometimes, and I wonder what your lines are. Like, what would you not retweet, or whenever you tweeted something or posted something, and then
So I got into Spot Bother twice actually. So I always try to look. You don't have to have a comment on everything. You can't. There's too much stuff going on, so you just need to focus your efforts. An example, I'm not going to get into it, is what's going on in Israel at the moment. That is a dangerous area to talk about, because there is people so polarised and are not capable of holding two opposing thoughts at the same time. It's a very difficult discussion to have. So sometimes it's best just not to wade in. But I also think if there is any way that your tweet can be misinterpreted, it will be, and people will deliberately misinterpret it. I posted a picture of myself and Gemma, who I do the podcast with, and there was a charity. They give showers for homeless people, and they had sent us some jumpers. So we just posted a picture of us wearing these jumpers, and didn't get any money for it. And it was just whoever bought these jumpers, the money went to this charity. And the jumpers said, "Save the Badgers, cull the Tories." And right, as if I'm inciting violence, and yet all of the GB News lot, all of the people that on the right, all of those right-wing commentators deliberately misinterpreted it to try and make out that I was inciting violence. Gemma's also got a full-time job. She got very close to losing it. People contacted her employer to try and get her cancelled. It was awful, and it's happened again since once. I was called a racist. I was called a racist because do you remember when they were trying to make out that the cabinet, because it's so multicultural, it was a win for ethnic equality and diversity? Yeah. I said it isn't. It's tokenism. It's actually the opposite. And I had so many people coming back saying you're racist. You're saying that actually if you're a person of colour, you're expected to behave in a certain way, and blah blah. And so sometimes it's like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth the aggro you're going to get back? But if you really strongly believe something and you're prepared for the onslaught, then maybe just go for it.
Question at the front here.
So the Labour Party is historically very bad at social media, and even worse at a local level.
You said that we didn't.
And I should say that because I'm a Labour Party.
Okay.
Are there any practical advice you can offer to make political content that is engaging and doesn't put us at risk of?
As councillors,
Can I just repeat that for the streams? It's Kaylee.
Yeah.
Kaylee's question is basically how can the Labour Party and councils and things use social media better? Any advice?
Ideas on this? Yeah, I think being authentic and not kind of like robot people online. Like they need to actually make some TikToks or something, like engage with the kind of modern social media and show a bit of personality, a bit about what they're actually doing, what they care about. Because the problem that we have is it's all very stage managed and they come across as being a bit robotic and wooden. And they're probably not. They're probably a laugh after a couple of drinks. They do a bit of karaoke or something. You need to see that they need relatability, because I think the only way that you can be successful on social media is if you're authentic. And you show like some kind of vulnerability and your interest, because people can relate to that. Everyone can relate to that. So that would be my advice on a personal level, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd also add, so in terms of producing the content, they also need to understand the social media platform. So, for example, YouTube, you need to understand what YouTube want from you. Over 80% of my views come from YouTube recommending that content. So YouTube needs, when it recommends it to someone, it's like, I think this person will enjoy it and watch it. They're not impressed with someone, they'll click on a video and then not just leave that video, but leave the whole platform. So, I could easily teach people how that platform works in terms, when you think your content's going to be engaging enough, because you can have the best content in the world. If no one clicks on it, no one's going to see it. So you also have to understand the platform.
I'd say with TikTok, with the new generations, make sure that you're using somebody who's from that demographic. I mean, you see it with like companies like Ryanair, Duolingo. It's clear that they've just hired some Gen Z intern to just go nuts. And some of the stuff they put out is hilarious. Yeah. Like Duolingo, for some reason, whoever's running the Duolingo has a crush on Dua Lipa. And that comes out in the content quite explicitly.
Well, I've noticed that Channel 4, like on Threads, is really interesting, and ITV. They're just taking the piss out of each other.
They've been coming for ITV, haven't they?
Yeah. But it's like jovially, like a bit of banter. Yeah. But that's really refreshing and that's nice, and it suits the platform. And like Phil said, I mean, you've got to know what works and what doesn't work on YouTube, it depends what you want to use it for. If you've got a really good website that's got, you know, your artistic films on it or something, yeah, use YouTube as somewhere to host your films, essentially. But if you're trying to build an audience, if you're trying to get voters to understand why you are doing what you are doing, and I'll give an example. Last, was it spring, I think? It wasn't, maybe it was over the summer. There was a Green motion to basically kill a bill. Was it the policing bill? It was one of the bills.
It's the public order
bill. And the Greens were looking to kill that bill in the Lords, and they could have done that if Labour had supported them, and Labour didn't support them, right? And there was a Labour MP, I think it might be West Streeting, who just said, well, if you don't want them to do things like this, you should vote for Labour. And that's the worst response. And Phil made a video about it saying, this is why they didn't go for this kill order. It would have come straight back to them. It would have achieved nothing. And Labour didn't bother to explain this to anyone. So everyone was forwarding these messages saying, oh, Labour could have stopped this from going ahead, and they chose not to, when that wasn't the case. So Labour, I feel, need to be able to engage better with their voters, not just supporters, but voters who might be wavering or whatever, but also more interaction. That's what I'd like to see with my Labour MPs and my Labour representatives. I want to see them doing, you know, weekly shows or even daily shows where it's just 5 minutes of them talking, and you can send them messages and they can respond to what you're saying and explain stuff if we don't understand it. Because one of the things that, you know, blows people's minds, and I always talk, because I'm from Liverpool, it blows people's minds that there are people out there who don't care about football. You know, Scousers are like, what? You don't care about football? What's wrong with them? And us politics wonks can be a bit like that as well. We can think, oh, you know, everyone should care about football, care about politics, you know? But there's some people out there who don't. And that's fair enough. But when they do engage once every 5 years, we need to make damn sure that they don't vote for the Tories. You know, that's what we need to do. Because there's no point in you know, getting claps by saying the things that you want us to say. We need to get the people who aren't in this room to vote for Labour. We need to get the people who aren't in this room to make sure the Tories are never going to, you know, get back in ever again after the stunts they have pulled over the last few years. So that's what I would like to see from Labour.
So on the issue of people not caring about politics, I forget what his name is. I forget what his name is, but there's a comedian, I published a video a bit ago, who said, I always talk to people and they're like, I don't, politics hasn't got anything to do with me. I'm not an immigrant or a foreigner or a doctor or a teacher or an old person or a young person or a person who drinks the water or needs clean air, or on and on and on and on and on and on. It's like, what's politics got to do with me? There is always a way. When I went to schools and I talked to young kids and I say, who cares about politics? None of the hands would go up. I'd say, well, do you care whether you get a job when you leave school, whether or not the NHS can look after you, that sort of stuff? And all the hands would go up. I'd say that's politics. Yeah. And for me, I was not interested in politics when I was their age at all. I was born in Darlington, grew up in Birmingham. Politics was just basically old white men shouting at each other in suits 100 miles away down in London. I didn't feel any connection with my life. You have to just say, these are why the things that you care about are affected by these people that are shouting in Westminster, because they do care about politics. They just haven't been shown exactly how. Gen Z, for example, they are all actively involved in politics. Anybody who's heard the concept of Andrew Tate is heavily involved in politics, because the stuff that Andrew Tate says is just another version of the culture wars that you see from Lee Anderson. It's the same thing. Yeah. They're involved in the small P politics. They need to see that it actually relates heavily to the capital P politics.
Yeah. Well, bringing people on board is half the battle. And that's why I feel like social media and also like stand-up comedy and stuff is so important in being able to relate to people and being able to make people, allow people to digest politics in a way that is kind of, you know, it doesn't feel like you're sitting there in a lecture being, you know, told a bunch of facts, because we've all got busy lives to get on with. And when we talk about young people not getting involved in politics, I kind of get it. If you're in your 20s now, living is a struggle. Trying to find somewhere to rent. Most people are living with their parents now because they can't even afford the rent to live somewhere else. They're working 3 jobs. They're thinking about, you know, they want to go out, they want to party, you know, they want to travel the world, they want to do all this stuff.
Yeah, but Graham, our politics is deliberately, it's inaccessible. It's by design.
That's the point I was going to make.
So I was the same as, I grew up, working class background, and I lived in London, but the idea of being in politics, I just thought those people are better than me. That's a job for people like them, not for people like me.
It's reverence, isn't it?
Completely, and it's made to be inaccessible. If you look, there's a book I'm reading which is, why we get the worst politicians, and it's because the barriers to entry is so high. You need to come from money, or you need to be on that conveyor belt from Oxbridge and know the right people, and it's deliberately like that. And yet, I hope another thing I'll be lobbying Labour for is, we need to be teaching politics and civic duty in school.
Yes.
Get people involved from a really young
age. The other thing as well with the media, because we rely on a particular group of media, they decide where our focus is. So if you take, for example, an issue like asylum, so all the focus is on people coming here. Well, as far as the media are concerned, they're not even trying to seek asylum. But, you focus on coming here and you think to yourself, but a large part of the politics needs to be on why is there so much displacement in the first place, whether for environmental or political reasons. But the same people who will complain about people coming here seeking asylum also want us to stop funding projects that might avoid some of that displacement. And the problem is that even a government that wants to deal with that, there's no political capital for them. Let's say a government works with other countries and stabilises a part of the world which would otherwise result in a lot of refugees, some of whom would come here. The public will never know that, and therefore they'll get no credit for it because there's no focus on that. And that's part of the problem as well. We're being told to focus on this or focus on that, and we're not focusing on root causes of problems, because the root causes will not again allow certain politicians to rise to prominence because it's not in their interests.
Yeah. Okay, another question, is it Anna? Yeah, would you like to ask the question?
Not a question, just to disagree with Marina, I apologise for disagreeing with you about it being hard to get into politics. It's piss easy to get into politics. I say this as a councillor with some of my fellow councillors here. The Labour Party is desperate for people to be candidates. Certainly,
someone who's like a full-time job and kids. You think it's easy?
You can get involved in at a campaigning level. If you would just turn up once every now and again to assist with some campaigning wherever it is you are. Labour is also desperate for activists at a local level to go and talk to people on the doorstep and persuade them there. I think it's fantastic what you're all doing on social media. It's powerful, and my experience is the most powerful thing is talking to people in person. You definitely can get involved in politics.
That is a good point. I also want to say, but I think also there's the aspect of if you grow up working class, you're getting by, that a lot of people don't feel that politics is for them, more than the fact that it's more that aspect. It's like that's something that's for rich people, and also those people that are churned out of private school feel entitled to rule us. That's another thing. So it's like the lessers, the ne'er-do-wells, it's that kind of class level, and I think that's where people feel like politics might not be accessible to them, not necessarily in a practical or real level, but in the sense that they don't feel good enough to be a part of it.
That's
what we need to change.
I was about to say Angela
Big up Ange, you love Ange.
One of the important things about Angela Rayner and Jess Phillips and people like that is to show that it is possible for people who don't necessarily come from a privileged background to get into
That's
politics.
That's what you were saying earlier, isn't it?
What I'd like Labour Social to be as it grows as a channel, and we're doing quite well, we've only been going six months, and we're already up to 35,000 subscribers, and we've had 1.5 million views of our videos just in the last 6 months. And mostly down to film rather than me. But that's been fantastic. What we want to do is get people engaged using the channel to become councillors, to go to those debates, to go to the council sessions, to get involved as MPs and stand as candidates and things like that. And this is a forum for that kind of discussion. And because we're not paid by Labour to do this, we're independent of Labour, but we are supportive of Labour. But also we want to get them to a point where we get the Tories out, and then we're involved in the discussion of what happens next, and that's really, really important to us. And from what I understand from the Labour MPs that I've spoken to, they're up for having that discussion with us, which is great because, you know, we've basically been, you know, grassroots campaigners effectively for the last few years, feeling like we are screaming into the void when it comes to this government, because they are not going to listen to anyone on the stage here. They're not going to listen to any of you in the audience here. They're only going to listen to their millionaire oil baron friends who are like, hey, why don't you stop any green initiatives? And that's a huge problem that we've got at the moment. So one of the things why we set up Labour Social was to have that two-way communication and get more people involved.
I'd like to talk about one big difference between Labour and the Conservatives, which will always be there. So if Keir Starmer does something, obviously there are some policies that many of us in Labour are going, ooh, it's a crap policy, isn't it really? Is it going to get us elected? Yes. Right then. Rishi Sunak last week cancels HS2. This is not something that Conservatives are happy about any more than anyone else is. Is it going to help us get elected? No, it's really unpopular. All right, carry on. You know, huge difference straight away.
They don't care. Okay, so we're gonna. Okay, we've got a couple of questions over here. Gentleman in the glasses. Yeah.
Yeah. In relation to the debate about social media, one thing I constantly always worry about the position is it a temporary position? Position that's kind of free whenever I.
What do you mean a temporary position?
Right. So, for example, if we're rolling out the supermarket now, is that a temporary position?
Everything is for the next Parliament. And you have to think about that. Now, what the intention is can be different. We can't read their minds. All I will say is, and I often say this, if you think about the policy makers in Labour right now, they are some of the most visible people who were trying to stop us leaving the EU. But we can't read their minds. I don't believe they were all kicked in the head by a horse at the same time. But anything that is promised in the manifesto, which could still change between now and then, but anything that's promised in the manifesto is for one Parliament, right? That is the constitutional situation, because come the next one, then there's a different manifesto. But of course, we can't read minds, so we can't know what they're saying. We don't get invited to their private discussions, so we can't know what their intentions is. So you know,
yeah. And it's very rich of the Tories to talk about Keir Starmer flip-flopping when they have literally U-turned on everything. There isn't a single policy I can think of, a Tory policy, in which they haven't have a U-turn. Sometimes more than once, like onshore wind farms. We're going to have one more question. Who we got? I'm trying to see. Are they late? Because we're trying to get some gender balance here. Any ladies with a question? Anyone? One? No? Okay. All right, we'll go over here, because this guy had his hand up. Oh, there you go. Go on. Sorry, we've got these really bright lights shining in our eyes, so it's a bit difficult. Go on.
I know a couple of socialist Labour councillors who are essentially sleeper cells right now for obvious reasons. And I was wondering what you thought the outcome might be, assuming if Labour get in again. Do you think there'll be more sleeper cells than we might imagine?
Okay, that was a question about sleeper cells of quite socialist people standing for being a councillor, or
yeah, I mean,
keeping their mouths shut until Labour get in.
I mean, inevitably this happens. It's happened with the Conservatives. But the way I see it now, I've been through a couple of cycles in my life of this. What's going to happen? Labour are being pragmatic because they're sick of losing. They can see the damage, they're sick of losing. So they're now going to win. They'll do things, hopefully they'll do things well, things will get better, they'll get used to winning. At that point, people in Labour will start to go, well, we're used to winning now, we take it for granted, we don't have to do, you know, we can forget about the Overton window, it doesn't really exist, or we've wheeled it over to communism by now. So then those ideas start to become a lot more appealing to the membership, who ultimately decide who, you know, candidates and the leader is and all the rest of it. Keir Starmer has to step down at some point. So yeah, it's always going to be a danger. It's an unfortunate aspect of party politics that, you know, if you have a lot of people organised and join the party, they'll have a large voice. We saw it with UKIP and associated groups with the Conservatives. The Conservatives today are fundamentally different to the Conservatives in the 1990s, for example. So inevitably, and I think with Labour it really does get that, because Labour is, the left in general is very much like the right wing has always said it, that the principle is power. On the left, it's about the principles of, what are the best policies, and people at the moment are saying, well, we need to do this to win. As soon as we start taking it for granted again, yes, I think there is danger.
But this is why PR is so important, because once you get that point where we then swing either to the far left, or even just keep going towards the right as we're currently doing, we'll end up losing a significant part of the voter share, and we won't get that right balance that allows us back into power. The only way we ensure that we protect that progressive majority in Parliament is by allowing that progressive majority to be reflected in Parliament.
It takes people into their natural spaces, doesn't it, and their natural leanings, and it just messes everything up.
Yeah.
Okay, and just someone in the chat was just saying, but when we do get PR, could we see Labour split into three? Sort of the more left wing.
You know what? But if that's the case, then that's the case. Because at the moment we're trying to glue together a party with all these different factions, and it's unnatural. And it's the same is going on in the Tory party.
Exactly.
You've got, Green Church, small C, and then you've got bloody extremists on the right, and the ERG. So actually, big C's. big C's. So proportional representation just lets everyone actually just settle into their natural places in a party that represents them, and lets voters actually put their tick in the box that they want to put it in.
Well said.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there. I just want to say a big shout out to Ankarat and to Alex and to Jez and to Sock Coppen and to Mark and to Questionable Absentee for the super chats that are coming in. So thank you very much for that. Big round of applause for the people watching at home. That's for you. And if you don't already tune into Labour Social, it's simply youtube.com/@Labour Social. And Phil and I do shows every day on there. And it's all, some of it's live, some of it's just talking about what Labour policy is or what's going on in the news. And we'd love you to join us if you're not already part of that. Huge thanks to the panel here. Can you give it up to Supertanskiii and to Marina and to Phil and to Femi for being here tonight. Thank you all, and hopefully we'll have some really good news next year after the general election. I've got some good news for you. The bar's going to be open for another hour, so if you want to hang around and hang out with us, you're very welcome to. So until next time, thank you very much for watching at home, and thank you very much to all the audience for coming along tonight. Thank you, and good night.